through Chelsea, I've been in a world-class environment. I know what that looks like. I know what great coaching looks like. Probably the most successful player that we were involved with coaching was Michael Elise. Parents need to be cautious with allowing their kids to pursue football so much when the risks are so high. The gaps between pro academies and grassroots are just getting bigger and bigger. I think that there is almost a formula into becoming a professional footballer. I went down the route of scouting. The chances of getting scouted get harder and harder the older the player gets. I've come to create this company, We Make Footballers, that serves about 20,000 players.
And Sean, what is your mission and why does your role matter in football?
So the company's mission, We Make Footballers' mission, is to help inspire as many children as possible to love football and to be the best they can be on and off the field. And I feel that my personal mission in football, is very connected to that. I started out playing football with my dad. I think that I had a terrible football upbringing. After everything that I've learned from being in football 25 years, I think that there is almost a formula into becoming a professional footballer. I do believe that. I think there are genetic ceilings, but so much is down to environment. And knowing that perfect formula, I think I was like the opposite to that. So I think with everything that I've experienced, I want to make the football coaching experience the best it can be for other children.
Yeah, right. Interesting. So, for people listening to this, tuning in, welcome to the podcast. Tried a little different style of intro this time.
I thought we were getting straight into it.
No, all good. So today we got Sean. We met like playing football here in Miami, and yesterday, I don't know if you can see here, but we actually won. What was the name?
Well, it's the Downtown
Cup Champions.
Yeah.
So it was a four-a-side tournament over about 5-6 weeks that we ended up winning yesterday, so we're on a bit of a high this morning. But Sean, really excited for you to be here today and talk to you kind of about who you are, what you're doing. So obviously then we just talked about kind of like your role, your mission in football. For someone that's listening to this that is wondering who you are, who are you? Who is Sean?
Yeah. So I've come to create this company, We Make Footballers, that serves about 20,000 players. We've helped more than 300, it's about 400 players we've counted who have signed professional academies.
In England?
In England. Yeah, in England. And so that's going back all the way to 2008. So a long time. Yeah. Probably the most successful player that we were involved with coaching was Michael Elise. And then there are numerous others now, and the pipeline is getting bigger and bigger. So I've worked through Chelsea. I've been at Chelsea for a long time initially as a coach, and then I became a scout. And through my journey with Chelsea, that I was with them for, I want to say like 15 years, QPR for like 4 years. And I've seen top players. I was thinking about it the other day about some of probably the best players that I've seen from a young age. I would say like Reece James, obviously Michael Elise, Musiala, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, Tammy Abraham was one, Dominic Solanke. Yeah, so these are all players that I would have been involved with coaching when they were 6 years old, 7 years old. So when they're out there playing at the highest level, you can picture what were like as kids. And so, through Chelsea, I've been in a world-class environment. I know what that looks like. I know what great coaching looks like. So working through my company, We Make Footballers, that's very much a grassroots amateur environment, but you can still aspire to have the very best, even if you have more limited resources. So that's what I'm constantly striving for.
So when you're mentioning these players like Michael Elise, Reece James, Solanke, Loftus-Cheek, were you involved with them through We Make Footballers, or were you involved with them through Chelsea?
Yeah. So through Chelsea.
So what was your role at Chelsea? Were you a scout or a coach, or what were you doing for there?
Yeah, I mean, maybe it might be helpful if I go back to the very, very start. And I, at the very beginning, I was saying that I had this terrible football journey. So I think that, growing up, I was thinking about it the other day, my dad was very passionate about football. He was a low-level amateur player. He would get me to practice a lot, and that's a really good thing. I think parents should practice with their children. And I think they should be very aware of their abilities, because children copy what they see. So if, as a parent, you lack technique, be careful of what you're demonstrating to your child. But throwing the ball, getting ball contact time is very positive. So, I did a lot of that with my dad, but never got into an actual team until I was 12. And then even when I was in that team, that was my dad's team, and it's very chaotic, poor coaching, poor facilities, everything bad. So that wasn't a great start for me. But like any kid in England, especially a boy, I wanted to be a footballer. And for some reason, some delusion, I really thought I could be a footballer, to the point where I didn't even work hard in my studies. I just was very, very stubborn in this belief. And around the age of 15, I joined a semi-pro club, and I got into their youth program there. And that was probably the first time I got good coaching. And then I also was really fortunate that my local amateur team, I joined them through my school, and they had an adult team. I started getting involved in the adult team. I got sort of bigger physically and started to play in that. There was a guy at that club who was one of the head scouts at Chelsea, and he had a commercial business within this amateur club. He got me to start volunteer coaching, and I loved it. I was so passionate. I started getting really involved in it. And there was an ex-footballer for Chelsea called Andy Myers. He was there at the club. His boy was something like 6. And so the scout got me to start coaching the group of 6-year-olds, because he didn't really care about the group. He just fobbed me off with them. And I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I started doing quite a bad job. And so then that footballer, he complained to one of the senior people at Chelsea, who happened to live on my road. And so then he got involved. He saw me coaching, and he wanted to help, and he wanted to show me good practice, good sessions. I literally was just doing my best. I followed everything he said. And from there, he then started, when I got to 16, 17, he started getting me to volunteer at Chelsea. And so in my first involvement at Chelsea, that's where Dominic Solanke was, and Tammy Abraham. And I just was kind of like a dog's body for this really senior guy at Chelsea. And it's really random, because if I didn't live on his road, he wouldn't have got me involved. And most people have to go through the community program at Chelsea, and that takes 10 years to finally get into the academy. And they prioritize ex-players and people within their network. So this, looking back at everything that's happened, that was a real blessing. And I would bunk days off university and go into Cobham, the training ground, just in the middle of the day. And around 2005, 2006, when Abramovich brought in his money, this was where they were investing a lot into the academy, and they brought in a lot of the top Dutch people. There's a guy called Frank Arneson, who previously was technical director at Tottenham. He came to Chelsea, and I got to be in the room with the most top people in football. And there was only maybe 10 people in the room, but because I was just there in the daytime, I was just learning all this stuff. And it was during a period where England was very set in their ways, and Chelsea were trying to seek the knowledge from the Dutch. And so they're bringing in all these experts. And so while all these top Chelsea people are all learning, I'm learning from them. And when I'm only 18, 19 now, and I was really blessed with that. So luckily I then sort of managed to do well at Chelsea. I got a coaching job, but I felt that I hit a bit of a ceiling, and I feel that if you're not an ex-player, it's hard to progress and get a full-time job as a coach. Because by this stage, by I was 19, 20, I started to realise I'm not going to be a professional footballer now, so maybe coaching could be a backup option for me. But even then at Chelsea, they were prioritising giving all the jobs to the ex-players. So then that's when I started to think about being a scout. and I went down the route of scouting, and yeah, that's how I've kind of forged my career that way.
So what does scouting mean? Because there's going to be a lot of people that are like, oh, he's a scout. So is he going and just flying to France, Germany, Italy to go and watch scout players for the first team?
Yeah.
Like, what was your role scouting at Chelsea?
Yeah, good question. Well, when I was talking about how the Dutch started to influence the Chelsea academy, and during a period where England are learning a lot from other countries as well during this time, the Dutch, they prioritize 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, and England started to now really work on developing and recruiting this age. The earliest that you could sign a kid in an academy in England would be under 9. And before 2006, 2007, what used to happen was that you'd just go out to grassroots teams at under 9 and then find players. But it would be down to grassroots to develop a player before that age. So then what then started to be created around this time, and Chelsea led the way with this, were development centres. So yeah, you understand.
I was part of one. Yeah, I was part of the one in Ash.
Right.
So I used to go to Ash like it was a Tuesday. That was the one closest to my house, and then I got moved to the one in Cobham. So then I was training at Cobham on like a Friday night, and I remember we were, because obviously the academy. So the elite centre was, I mean, they told us it was 1 below the academy. Maybe it was 2 below, but we would be training on a Friday night, and I remember like we would go and watch we were on the, do you know the turf one next to the U23 pitch?
Yeah.
So you have like the academy or the first team building, then you have the academy building, and then you have like the U19 pitch, the grass one, or the reserve pitch, and then there's the turf pitch.
Right.
We would be training on the turf pitch on a Friday, and I remember like on the grass pitch, sometimes we'd see like the academy team, and we'd go and watch for a little bit, and there'd be like ballers, like Reece, like my age was like Reece James, Mason Mount, Tammy Abraham. I used to go to Aldershot to watch the games.
Okay.
You remember, because they used to play at Aldershot, the reserve games, and Aldershot's close to my house.
Right.
So I would go and watch like Mason Mount before he went to Vitesse.
Yeah.
And I remember going and watching them, like unreal, like wow. That level is amazing.
Well, yeah, these development centres that you're talking about, this was a change in the programme, and this was where Arsenal used to have the best academy in London, and then around this sort of time, 2008, probably around this time of Reece James, this is where there became a shift, and Chelsea started to recruit the best players, and it started to be because they were recruiting so early, the 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, and then this then changed everything. So me as a scout, I would be a scout who'd focus on finding the best 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds. That sounds really extreme, doesn't it?
No, it sounds extreme, but I want to talk to you because people could listen to this, and even me, I'm thinking, Jesus, like Chelsea are going after 4, 5, 6-year-olds. Maybe that's
not 4-year-olds. No,
okay, they're watching like 5, 6-year-olds, or what?
Yeah, 5-year-olds. Okay, yeah, they're strict with no 4-year-olds.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but that's crazy. Like maybe that's why they are the leader. That's why they are the best clubs, because they're watching players at that young of an age.
Yeah.
But for me, like if I was to, I mean, I haven't watched any players that young ever, I think. But how do you know if someone's good at 5, 6 years old? Can you tell?
You can tell. So if I think about Michael Elise, so I was his scout. So when I saw him at 7 years old, he moved around the pitch just so gracefully, very much like Yamal, Lamine Yamal. And so thinking about players like that, Musiala, that athletically, they are just perfect specimens almost for football.
Even at that age?
Well, yeah. The gates would open so well. They'd be gliding on the balls of their feet. It'd be effortless how they'd run. Arm movements would be perfect. So, yeah, I mean, ideally, you'd love all your players to move like that almost in every position. But, that's not necessarily realistic. So people are going to have different strengths. So maybe there might be other players who maybe are small, but then they make up for it with amazing game understanding, big personality. You're kind of on spectrums of working towards perfection, and let's say like Jude Bellingham has almost everything, but then you make concessions if they don't have that. All right, what do they have to compensate for their weakness.
So for those players that you're talking about, like gliding across the pitch,
Yeah.
knowing their stories, they weren't probably working with private trainers when they were 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years old.
Sure.
Do you think that's genetics? Do you think that's just their gift given to them? Like, why are they gliding across the pitch and other kids are not?
Yeah, that is a genetic gift. It is, yeah. Athletically, they have been gifted with that. I've also come to realise, again, and this is what I touched on at the start, where I said, I think, there's kind of a formula, because, yeah, your game IQ, your IQ, that's genetic. You've inherited that. So there'll be certain ceilings you have athletically and in your mind. But I think that technique, I think that is so much down to environment, and you can just improve through repetitions and hour of practice. So for me as a scout, and you're seeing this more and more now, with especially in England, and other countries are following as well, and people are all saying that the Premier League and football is so athletic now, athletic and tactical, because you recruit essentially for high genetic ceilings, and then you trust that the training will then develop the rest.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because so when you're a scout going to watch those types of age groups, are you going every weekend? Are you going like once a month? Are you going to like a big showcase? Are you, like, for example, how do you go and watch Michael Elise? Does someone call you and say, hey, Sean, there's a really good player, I want you to go and watch? Or do you do your research on the FA website and be like, okay, this week I'm going to go and watch this game. This week, this team is top of the table, so I'm going to go and watch them. Like, how do you figure out what games you're going to go and watch?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I went through a whole journey where you have no reputation at the start. I said that to start,
like you personally.
Yeah, generally most scouts don't have a reputation. Like when you're first starting out, so you've got to develop that, and then that's when the clubs are going to want you. So I actually, when I was initially this coach for Chelsea, within their development centre programs, I was a development centre coach, but I wanted more. I wanted to be a full-time coach. I was only part-time. And then they wouldn't give that to me, and then they wouldn't give me a scout role because they said, no, you're too young, don't worry about scouting. Yeah. So then that was where I had to go to QPR, and I did 4 years at QPR, became a real nuisance, got players like Harvey Elliott to QPR and like top ones there. And then Chelsea then like kind of brought me back, and that's when I was able to negotiate, and I was to say, well, I need to be a scout now. So then I went into Chelsea, but again, I was forging my career. I had no reputation. So yes, every weekend I would have to be out. I had a line manager that I would have to report to. I was focused on the younger ages, as I said, just more under 8s. But I would have to, do my research. With Michael Elise, I got told by a friend that there was this really, really top player. And you do get tip-offs. So you have to look at the top teams in your area, go and look for them. You have to be very methodical. You almost create like a lot of spreadsheets. And all of this stuff has developed. There's a lot more technology involved now to track what scouts are doing. Whereas in the past, it was much more down to where people felt like going. And you'd get more inconsistent results, whereas football's going more Moneyball, and they're getting a lot more data driven with everything they're doing, even at the younger ages.
Yeah. So if there's like a hit, because a lot of the stuff for Select Generation I talk about is like we try and find hidden gems, because if you're at like a top MLS academy, if you're at like these big teams that go to all these big showcases, and you have like a pro offer or a Division 1 college offer full ride, you don't really need us. Like I'm trying to go and find that player that needs a look, needs some exposure. And like for me personally, when I'm picking the showcases to go to, like, yes, we'll go to the big tournaments like the MLS Next Fest, the ECNL showcases, but like there'll be some games I go to where there's no college coaches because I'm trying to pick, and then I'm like, okay, I know why there's no college coaches here, because it's a rubbish level. Right. But I wouldn't have known that if I didn't go, Yeah. And then there's other showcases that I go to where I'm researching, like, okay, this team, do I want to go and watch this team? This team has a good record in the league. Maybe this team like is not doing that well, but they've like, sometimes I look at the goalie stats and I'll see like the goalie's making a lot of saves. Is that because the defense is rubbish or because he's a good goalie? You got to go and figure that out. So, because your experience is obviously more in the UK, so for a parent listening to this that's thinking, I really want my son to get seen, do you go off like the team at the top of the league that's winning? Is that the team that you want to go and watch? Do you just go and like randomly pick a team to go and watch? Like if I'm a parent listening to this thinking, okay, I want my son to get seen by Chelsea, how does he get seen by Chelsea?
And the parent is living in the UK.
Yeah.
And what age is this parent? What are you?
Let's say that he's, I don't know, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. Like
Okay,
before,
so foundation phase player. So the chances of getting scouted get harder and harder the older the player gets. You'll get a lot of social media accounts that love to put out posts where they'll Eze is a great story because he kept getting rejected. He was at academies time and time again. People forget that. But social media accounts love to say, never give up, never give up. But I think that it's necessary to understand the realities that it does get harder and harder.
Why?
Because as I talked about earlier, with the Dutch philosophy of finding players earlier, that's based in science, that children are more receptive to learn the younger they are. They talk about this golden window of learning, and it's where the brain is getting more REM sleep at night. It's still really developing, and so children will just be able to soak up information. So when they're in good environments, you can really correct and give them really good technique. Now, what can happen is that in a lot of grassroots environments, these are poor environments, and there is techniques that are not being corrected, and children start forming bad habits. And we say practice makes permanent. So the player now that hasn't been scouted, that maybe has been in a bad environment, is 10 years old. Yes, they might have some qualities, but they might have some really, really bad habits. So a scout has to be able to say, wow, that player has been in a bad environment. They've got these amazing qualities. They're a really good learner. If they came into our environment, they would excel and they'd catch up on their weaknesses. So it does happen. Absolutely, players do come in from grassroots that haven't been scouted. Exactly. It's a lot harder because they've formed bad habits.
It's interesting you say that, because I'm like, for me personally, I was never at like a top academy. I was always kind of playing like high level, like good level, but I was always like the level below academy. So I played, for example, like for Farnham Town, for Sandhurst Town. I was playing in like Fulham Elite, Chelsea Elite, and these are all like good environments for like good players, but not like the elite level players. And now you're saying that, it makes sense, because like when I was growing up, I was like making mistakes, but maybe the coaching wasn't top. Like there wasn't UEFA licensed coaches. There were good coaches, but they weren't like correcting every little thing. And now I'm thinking about it, like those habits probably translated when I went to college, or when I went to, or tried to make it as a pro. Like I didn't have the small habits because I wasn't like brought up with those. Like I was kind of, when I was growing up and playing with these coaches, I had to kind of navigate that myself, and like mistakes that I made, I had to figure out myself, because maybe they told me like, Sam, your first touch needs to be better. But okay, what does that mean? Like maybe at like a Chelsea academy, they would, Sam, your touch needs to be better. We're going to do this drill, and we're going to do these cones, and we're going to like put you in this game method, right? And when you're in that environment, that's where the pros are, because from a young age, they've been like pinpointed all your mistakes to correct them. Whereas if you're not in a pro academy, you've kind of got to figure it out yourself. And some things you do well, and other things. And I think I've been very coachable. Like I think one of my qualities in my playing career was I was very coachable and I listened. Yeah. But that's because kind of I had to figure it all out myself. Like, don't get me wrong, I had really good coaches and I'm forever thankful for them. But I had to figure out a lot of this stuff myself. But like I said, if I was in Chelsea Academy, maybe they would have corrected that all. Definitely
would have. Definitely. And, you know, now everything's recorded. So when you're talking about a mistake that might consistently be happening, you and your parent would be given loads of clips and footage of that to then look at and assess, and then you be able to understand, oh yeah, that is the mistake I'm making. I mean, I always say that the gaps between pro academies and grassroots are just getting bigger and bigger because the resources that they've got in those elite academies, because the professional academies with the FFP rules, the companies, I call them companies, the clubs depend on these academies to create players that they can sell on. So many of the top teams, you're looking at how they've passed the FFP rules, and it's all because of profit they've made from players that they've sold on. So now the boards are seeing how necessary they have to have these academies succeed. I mean, one example that I give with how the gap is getting bigger and bigger is to do with strength and conditioning. So from under 9s children in Chelsea, let's give that example because I know that one so well, they will start to do strength and conditioning work. And again, to some people that might sound crazy, that might sound really extreme. It's not loaded. It would be, they might be doing
flexibility, mobility.
Yeah, and they'll be doing deadlifting, but with no weights on it, or just tiny weights. But they're learning the form of how to do it. So then gradually, you start increasing load as the player gets older and older. And these are top scientists that are managing all this. So it's not going to stunt the child's growth or anything like that. And they're getting the correct nutrition, education that comes with it. Obviously, there's going to be the odd kid that's still going to have KFC and McDonald's and this sort of stuff, but the parents are being so well educated, the children are being so well educated, they're making very, very good choices in the nutrition. And then, with this is training that I'm talking about, the strength conditioning ones, what then starts to happen is the children's bodies adapt and they become so elite that they can deal with all the amount of work, the games that they need to do, the amount of training they need to do. So then if, let's say, a grassroots player comes in on trial and they've never done any of those type of training before, their body might break down. They might get injured after the first week because they're doing the sprints, they're doing 3 training sessions in a week. Suddenly their body's just getting all these injuries, and they might be 13, but it's not necessarily their fault. They haven't just had the development that the other kids have had with building these like strong bodies suited for football like this.
So for someone that's listening to this that is 15, 16, that's thinking, wow, I've not had any of that.
Yeah.
I've not been exposed to that. I'm miles behind, but they still want to be a pro footballer. What do you say to that player?
Be careful. I made that mistake where I had this belief that I could be a footballer. And it's for all my 20s, I was earning very, very little money because through the age of maybe 21, 22, 23, I was still chasing semi-pro football, maybe getting £10 in a game or if I was in the reserves or whatever. I was just pursuing this. And at all this time, it's a key age in your 20s, I wasn't really developing my career. I know I'm saying that I'm doing this stuff in scouting, but it's really low money in scouting. And also in the coaching I was doing, they don't pay people well because they kind of exploit everyone's passion. So I was doing all this because I just love football so much. And at that time, I didn't really care about money. I did. I'm very ambitious, but football was the most important thing to me. And then as I'm getting into late 20s, 30s, and still not earning very well, and you want to have a family, you want to do all the sort of things, you need to have money. But probably the start that I had of pursuing football, it gave me a big disadvantage. So I think people need to just be very, very cautious. I think parents need to be cautious with allowing their kids to pursue football so much when the risks are so high. They need to have things on the outside, whether they're doing education in AI or how to create content or understanding business, understanding trading, investments. There's loads of things that can be done to still make sure the child, the person is earning and can have a successful career without their passion for football kind of derailing them.
This is interesting because, like, for example, that's completely probably the reason why I came to the US, was because I wanted to take my football to the next. I know in England I wasn't going to make it as a pro,
right?
And I was like, okay, I want to travel, I want to study, and I want to keep playing football.
Yeah.
So why don't I come out to the US? I can do all three. When you think about, I mean, obviously, how long have you been in Miami for now?
6 months.
6 months.
Yeah.
So before you came to Miami or the US, did you know about college soccer or playing in the university?
Yeah, but I think I was so connected to Chelsea. I thought that was such a good opportunity. I didn't really want to give that up. I thought that I had something that was important that I was really lucky to have. So I wanted to keep pursuing that. I'm just going back how my mind was when I was in my early 20s.
Yeah. So when you were talking then a little bit about you should focus on other things like setting up a business or, I don't know, reading or listening to AI or being a physio, whatever you want to do as your hobby. What age should you start thinking about that? Is there a specific age, or is it a time? Maybe when you get released from a club, maybe when you are not getting trials or not getting offers? Is it 16? Is it 18? Like, when should you kind of start thinking about not making it as a pro?
Yeah, I mean, the chances even for Chelsea's under 23s, let's give that group as example, maybe one of those might play for Chelsea first team. And so then maybe there's 30% of that group who are just going to quit football, maybe. I think that once you get a pro contract at a club like Chelsea or Ajax or Liverpool or whoever it might be, one of those top academies, you do have a very high chance of being a professional footballer somewhere. And it could be out in America, wherever it is. But they're the ones at the top academies. So I think players need to really just understand, educate yourself, listen to podcasts like yours, my podcast that I have, Project Footballer, we talk about all of this. We have loads of experts on. So parents and players, let's say they're 15, 16, 17, yeah, they need to be thinking about B plans basically relative to where they're currently at.
What would you say if a player said, Sean, I disagree.
Yeah.
I need, because this is a lot of the kids that talk to me, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't want to have a plan B. Has to be football. Has to be football. If I have a plan B, then it means that there is no plan A. You know, that's literally what players say to me.
I know.
And what do you think?
And that's what I would have said when I was back then as well. And yeah, it's dumb. I mean, I get it. And literally on one of my last podcast episodes, we had the exact conversation. We talked about this analogy of burn the boats. Have you heard that before? No. All right. It's this kind of like fable where this tribe or whatever go over to take over this island, and they've only had they're really under-resourced. There's maybe only 100 in their army, and then on the island there's thousands of people, but the guy who's leading the army, he says he gets everyone off the boat, and then he turns around and then he fires these arrows onto the boats and burns them. And then he says, right, everyone, we're not going home. We've got no B plan, so we've got to go and kill these 1,000 people. We've got to win. And I think they ended up winning the war. And so that's the idea of burn the boats. And so that, yes, there are people that say, if I just go all in and think nothing else, then I make this happen. And there will be the occasional people that do make that. But I would guess more often people fail, and then the risk is you have no B plan. So I don't think it's logical and it's not rational. And I understand football is romantic and our passion and emotions take over with our decisions. I did it myself. But I think parents and players need to really understand the data, look objectively to say, all right, what was my upbringing? There's players I'm competing with at the highest level, and they're dropping out of academies, and they drop down. They drop down into League One, League Two. They go out to America. The colleges would much rather have someone who's been at an academy all their career and take that player than someone who's not been, like me, you know. And so, yeah, I think people need to assess where they're at and just try and be as realistic as possible while still allowing yourself to dream, because there will be people who are able to beat the odds. There will be the occasion of people that do that.
No, I totally agree. And I say to like a lot of the players too, like an example I can give is like players say like they want to play Division 1.
Right.
College soccer, which is like these Division 1 colleges are bringing players from Chelsea, from Arsenal, from Tottenham, from Football League academies, transfers, like older players. And like, to go Division 1 should be your goal. Like, that's a great goal to have. Like, that's your dream. Awesome. But don't neglect the other pathways too. Like, there's so many opportunities for football and for life too. Like, there's kids that tell me, oh, like, Sam, I was just reading about like this computer programming or this software. I'm like, that's great. Like, you should read more. Like, like, I love that. You know, like, have a hobby, have something outside of soccer too. Because also, if you're engrossed in soccer and it's your life, you can get very miserable. You get injured. Your coach tells you didn't have a good game. Your parent tells you didn't have a good game, and if football is like your only thing you got going on, it's not going to be good for you. Like, you should have other things like, okay, I didn't have a good game, I'm going to go play, I don't know, Minecraft, or I'm going to go play FIFA, or I'm going to go read this book about science or physiotherapy or massage, or I'm going to go on ChatGPT and ask it, hey, how do I start a content Instagram page? You know, like, have other things that you're passionate about, because that will also help you with your football, take your mind off it. And then I wanted to ask you, Sean, about you mentioned like formula for a footballer,
right?
Can you expand on that? Like, what is the formula for a pro footballer?
Right, yeah. I mean, it starts early. So there's generally, I mean, I've been fortunate to interview so many famous footballers that have made it. And I've studied so many of the books of footballers, researching it. Time and time again, there's often a dad who's been instrumental. It's often the dad who didn't quite make it, and then they then want to fulfill their dreams through their child. And you've got Beckham as an example, Frank Lampard, Neymar, Pele. I mean, you could literally go through Mbappe, all these footballers whose dads, Thierry Henry, they said, right, my child is going to do it. And so then you've got a very committed parent that wants to practice a lot with their child and build a program for them. And then, yeah, it does start early. So there's good practice, and good practice at a young age. Let's say at 4 years old, 5 years old, everything's just around fun, and they don't even really understand they're playing football. They're just enjoying what they're doing. They're just enjoying spending time with their parents and this fun environment. And then gradually there's good technique being introduced and shown. So then maybe a team starts at under 7, and then hopefully they get into an academy. I'm kind of looking with the model that's in Europe, where the academy environment starts at under 9s and it starts early. I don't know how young it starts in the US. I think it's maybe like 12 here.
Yeah, it starts really a lot older than that. Yeah.
Right. So then the parents should be seeking out a good environment and with good coaches, so the child can understand that they can get good technique and good physical development, but they also need to have good game understanding, and the tactical side of the game needs to be developed as well as the social side.
This is really interesting, because now I'm thinking about this, it makes a lot of sense too, because a lot of the things I say, or a lot of things I've said in the past, is like a lot of the parents in the US, they played basketball, American football, baseball, so they don't really understand soccer. Like, I talk to a lot of parents and they're like, yeah, my son went and played soccer because he enjoyed it, he was good at it. But the parents don't really understand soccer that much. Like, I say to a lot of things like, oh yeah, your son got rolled at the end of the game, and he's like, what does that mean? Right. Or like, oh yeah, like your son, he was I don't know, he was like pinned in the corner, like, or he didn't go and like he went to punch instead of catch it, and the parents like, what does that mean? And then for parents kind of listening to this, how involved should like parents be in the, because this is also another thing. I talk to a lot of parents and they're like, hey Sam, I've been like telling my kid, like, you need to go to the gym, you need to go and do your studies, you need to go to the field, and my son just doesn't really respond to this. And then also there's a lot of times where the parent will be like, yeah, I just kind of let my son do whatever he wants, and then the son kind of does like not enough. So how involved should a parent be? Like,
that's a really, really good point. And something I've observed in the 6 months that I've been here as well, I've recognised the same thing. It's probably a huge difference that I've seen in football culture between UK and US. And I do recognise it as a disadvantage for players growing up here, because what I'm used to experiencing in the UK is that you can have a conversation with a parent on the sideline to just give feedback, like you said, and they take it in, they completely understand it, and they're able to show lots of the mums and dads, mainly the dads, have played some football, and they can show their child some stuff, and they can explain with the salt shakers, and they're doing that with their child. And yeah, whereas I'm having conversations in the US and I'm having to say, relate it to basketball. I'm saying,
really?
Yeah. I'll
really?
say...
And you know nothing about basketball.
I don't know nothing about basketball, but we're talking the same concept of maybe getting like into triangles. Jockeying, yeah, exactly. Maybe there was one example where the player kept hoofing the ball into the box and was losing the ball and taking too much risk. And I was saying, well, in basketball, to the dads, if everyone's crowded around the hoop, you wouldn't want someone to throw the ball into the mixer like that, because chances are it's going to get caught. So I was trying to think with those analogies, and I think over time it's going to improve. But yes, one of the worst things that can happen is where a parent is not self-aware, they're deluded, they think that they know loads about soccer because they've watched some games or whatever, and this even happens in England, and then they then start telling their child what to do with awful programming. And the analogy that we give on this is that if I want to fix my Apple phone, I don't start breaking it and then messing around with the wires because I don't know what the hell to do with an Apple phone. And a parent should think about programming their child's mind the same way with soccer. And don't feed the wrong information, and try and understand your limitations. So much stuff is available on YouTube that you can quickly get experts. And there are good coaching programs in the US, in a lot of places. You might have to drive a bit further and you might have to go and seek them out, but find the right places for your child, because that environment is everything. If you're in the wrong environment, the wrong program will go to the child, and then that's going to impact them for a long time, because practice makes permanent.
Exactly. How important is environment?
Yeah, I think that, like when we debate on my podcast, nature and nurture, I talked earlier about the blessed players like Elise with the genetics that he had from an athletic point of view, but so much had to be improved with the environment he had. So that's the thing. Yeah, the environment can go huge. You know, you want the player to be able to maximize the ability that they were born with, and most players don't reach those ceilings. They don't maximize their potential. So if you're getting great coaching to your child and doing everything right, everything's 10 out of 10, nutrition, technical training, the coaching, the team they're in, their social development, all that, then they've got a good chance. But yeah, at some point it will come down to their natural ceiling.
So let's say that I am listening to this and I'm thinking, like, I really need to go and find a good coach,
right,
or I just need to find a good coach in general. And you're looking for all these qualities in a coach. Like, you want someone that's going to give you good feedback. You want someone that's got maybe a license. You want someone maybe that's played at a high level. You want someone that's worked with a good portfolio of players that knows what they're talking about. Like, you want to work with a coach who's legit.
Yeah.
How do I do my research about, like, We Make Footballers, or about Sean, or about this coach? Or how do I pick a good trainer?
Yeah. I mean, we're fortunate now that with social media and websites and videos and everything else, that there's that saying that how you do anything is how you do everything. So if they're going to be a good coach, if you go on their Instagram, they'll have nice content on there. It'll be created well. If you go on their YouTube, there'll be content that they should have good reviews. I think, yeah, doing your online research, you should get a good guide, and then it's a case of then going along to a training session. And I think that coaches, they need to create very nurturing environments. So if you get any bad vibes that they're starting to shout at the kids or do some stuff that's just not cool, walk away straight away. Yeah, that would be kind of my advice.
Because, for example, when I'm saying, like, I had an agent on here and I was asking him, like, what should you look for when you pick your agency?
Right.
And the agent was saying, like, you should look for an agency that's going to be honest with you. Like, we don't really work with everyone. Like, if you're good, then okay. But look for an agent who's going to be honest with you. Look for an agent who's got a good portfolio of obviously sending players to good colleges or good teams.
Yeah.
Like, look at their reviews on Google, for example. Like, you should be looking for these things in an agency. So when you're looking for a private trainer, because I know like a million private trainers,
yeah,
and some, like, I would feel comfortable recommending based on my relationship with them, and others I would be like, I'm not really sure if it's like a money grab or whatever. So when you're setting up like a We Make Footballers group or session, what makes We Make Footballers different to anyone else?
Okay, I mean, with what we've done, we've found a way to get nearly 500 touches of the ball into an hour training session. So there's 70% ball rolling time. The sessions have been created. They're basically taken from the Chelsea stuff that I did back in the day, and they've been adapted and suited to the appropriate age group. And so they're very intense sessions, but very fun. And we've now formed clubs. So that's like the next evolution of We Make Footballers, where we used to be just a training program and now we're clubs. One thing I just wanted to go back a step on was that on the advice of choosing a club or a coach, I think be really cautious about results. I think a lot more around the group of players that your child is going to be playing with, that they should be the same ability level for your child. Think more like that, because
what happens if you're deluded and you think your kid's the best player?
Yeah, that's going to make it hard for you. Because, yeah, you should see if they're not getting onto the ball, if they're losing their duels, they're losing their 1v1s. You're going to see
how do
if
you
they're
work
not
with
feeling
a deluded
it.
parent? Because I don't want to, I work with, I don't want to say I work with, I've come across a lot of deluded parents,
Yeah.
and they think their son should be playing at this, and I'm like, your son is not even playing for his team. Like,
Right.
why? Oh yeah, but the coach doesn't like him. Why doesn't the coach like him? Because he's not good enough. Like, oh, because he was on holiday last week and the coach isn't playing him. Okay, then don't go on holiday in the middle of the season.
Yeah.
You know, like, so when you're working with, when you're coming across or communicating with a parent like this who is, maybe they're selling their son too much. They think their son is or daughter is the best player. Sometimes I struggle with it, because you want to be honest, but obviously you don't want to deliver it. Like, at the end of the day, it's someone's son or someone's daughter. Like, you need to be respectful and deliver it in a way that's, so they understand and respectful. How do you work with these parents that maybe they think their son is better than he is?
Yeah, I mean, I liked the things that you just described there, and when I talked about examples of the player failing, and I said they didn't win their duels, or they didn't get onto the ball, that's very tangible, that's factual. You can see it. So I would, if I'm delivering that type of information, I'm going to give those examples, but then I would probably soften it and I'll say, look man, football's opinions, I could be wrong.
It's true.
Yeah. If my advice is that it might be that they're released, and there's been times where I've had to release players, and so I would say that, and I'd say, look, I wish them the best at this other club. Let's say it's in a grassroots environment, and you're maybe exiting them from the club. I don't know the situation, but it could be that they may be dropping down a team, and you're explaining that reason. Yeah, I think you want to still be very supportive and very nurturing in what you're saying, and try to think about the best intentions for the child. As long as you've got that kind of in your heart, then you should be okay.
It's like you're being kind, you're not being nice. Like,
exactly.
being nice would be like, oh no, I think he's good, I think you're right.
Yes.
But that's not being kind. Is like, listen, he needs to improve this to get better.
Exactly.
It's like being kind of being nice.
Exactly. And I think from what I've understood with the US coaching scene is that because there's quite a bit of money at stake,
the coaches need to keep the player to get paid.
I think so. Yeah.
No, it's true.
Yeah. I think that sometimes coaches will not give that correct information because they don't want to upset the parent and they want to keep the money rolling in. And to be fair, that's actually gone back to my point that was at the very start, where I was warning people about coaching. I'm used to UK where coaching is really poorly paid, but in the US, I think it's actually very well paid.
Very well paid.
You could earn like $80,000 or something.
Coaching from like 4 to 8 every night.
And so if you're a player who hasn't made it pro, maybe you could be 19, you could quickly get your badges and you've got a very good career. And I think where we're thinking about how AI is going to disrupt the workplaces for so many different people, there's so many careers that are going to disappear in next 6 months, 12 months. I'd like to think that football is one of those evergreen industries that is going to be safe for a long time, because we saw in COVID where we weren't allowed to be with people, we weren't allowed to coach, we missed out on that social connection. And then as soon as football was allowed again, everyone loved it. It made the world feel, exactly. It made us feel excited again. And so I sometimes daydream and think, oh yeah, I mean, imagine, there's going to be so many people unemployed and what will the world be like? But I think football coaching is going to be one that is going to be safe. So yeah, if parents are listening and they're thinking about their kid pursuing football,
doesn't have to be a
what is the B plan? Yeah, there is a B plan in America in coaching. I don't think so much in the UK. I don't think it's very well paid there. But unless you have your own business, so then if you can scale, which what I've done with Women Footballers, where you build a business and you've got a lot of coaches working for you as the business owner, then that becomes a viable career.
Interesting.
Yeah, but in the US, I think it seems that you can be a coach successful.
Since you've been here for the last 6 months, when I first came to the US, there was a big culture shock, and I was in like you're lucky you moved to Miami. I moved to like a tiny town in the middle of North Carolina.
Right.
Like, what are the and I remember like the standard of refereeing was horrible. Even the coach that I have, forever grateful for him for bringing me to the US, but not a good coach. And like I really struggled with kind of like the roll on roll off subs, which is obviously the college game. You're working with like younger kids.
Yeah.
What has been the biggest differences in terms of football culture between UK US?
Kids not practicing enough. They don't practice anywhere near as much as they practice in England. And so you'd be doing a work in a training session on a Monday. You see them again the next Monday, and you'd expect some progress in that time based on what I'm used to experiencing. And there would be very limited progress. And you're saying, what practice has gone on here? And then you talk to the parent, and they'll explain, no, we didn't practice. And we gave the example earlier
Why didn't they?
Well, I
Did
think
they tell you why?
It might be that they had family, they had this and this, they're doing all these different things. They're
Whereas
quite
back home,
distracted.
it's like football.
Yeah, back home we're all obsessed with football, so there's this commitment to want to improve. And by the way, I don't mean to generalize and say that it's all like this across the US. I know that there'll be some like strong clubs where there is all this commitment going on, but I'm just saying the general difference that I've seen is that en masse the culture is very different. The understanding of football from your postman and your general person isn't the same as what I'm used to experiencing. And so yeah, parents don't have that knowledge.
Was it difficult for you, the culture shock, to kind of get used to? Or
no.
Did you feel a bit like, I mean, I'm guessing you probably felt like, wow, like there's a lot of potential here. Like,
yeah,
this is even easier for me. Or
I think about it more from an opportunity of potential. Yeah, exactly. And like one of the ways that I've tried to attempt to have a solution to the practice problem. Do you know what player makers are? Are they just like a little strap that goes onto the player's boot, and then you can then track how many touches they've had of the ball. So we bought all players in our league one of those player makers, and we now create a competition whereby parents have to show screenshots on Saturday after a week how many touches their kid had. So we've gamified practice, and that's had a good effect. And we did it with about 30 parents, and we're now going to then scale that out more because it's worked well. Yeah.
That's a good idea.
One quick thing I wanted to ask you was when you talked about Division 1 players, how much did they earn, do you think?
Division 1 college. So university is like you have to pay to go.
You said, you've got players who aspire to play Division 1.
Yeah. Like Division 1 is like in the college system.
Oh.
So you have, do you know how the college system works or not really?
Not really.
So you have like NCAA, which is Division 1, 2, 3. So Division 1 would be like UCLA, Wake Forest, Clemson, like the big schools, like the big massive schools. That's like Division 1. So you go there for 4 years. You could be on a full scholarship, so you don't have to pay, but it's basically university. Then you have Division 2, which is scholarships available, but they're like small private schools. That's like to one that I went to, small school. And you have Division 3, which is just Americans pretty much because there's no scholarships.
Yeah.
Then you have NAIA, which is like a different setup, a lot of scholarships, a lot less regulations, rules, still small schools. Then you have like junior college, which is like a 2-year program to feed into the 4-year. But then you have like MLS Next Pro, which is basically the reserve teams for the MLS teams. Players could be on a rookie like 10,000 a year, 20, 30,000, probably max 40, 50,000, depending on if they're in the first team or not. USL 1, I think, like I texted you, the average salary is about $20,000. USL Championship is about $50,000, $40,000.
So people would be better off trying to be a coach than a player at that level.
Yeah, but then I guess but you can also play and coach. But there's a lot, like for example, USL 1, you're making 20 grand a year. A lot of them coach teams. So like they're professional footballers, but they have like 2 jobs. They also coach like 2-3 teams.
Interesting.
So like players want, like for example, my personal story, I didn't want to coach. I don't have like passion for coaching. I wasn't good enough to be pro, but I still wanted to be involved in football, so I set up the agency. But like for a lot of players coming out of college, for example, there's a lot of players that go and play USL 1 for a year and they're like, okay, I'm going to go be a pro footballer for a year. I'm going to travel around. I'm going to have the experience. But then after a year, it's like, I'm making 20 grand. Like I can't live off that. It's not a career.
No.
so then they get into coaching. But because they play pro, they have on their resume that they play pro, and they can charge more for like private sessions or to be a coach, you know?
So is that like the route that some of these parents listening, should they be thinking
About coaching?
about, coaching as the serious route? Because it seems to get the full-time career as a player is so hard and so limited in the US.
I honestly, the players that I talk to, I would say probably 10% tell me they want to coach. The rest of them just want to play. And then, because the thing about in the UK...
But where do they want to play? In the US?
In the US or in Europe.
Oh, so they want to get moved to Europe.
So,
okay.
For example, like your background, you're probably thinking, I'm assuming, that the players that you're working with are just focused on being pro, because in England there's not really like an NCAA where you can study and play. Whereas the players I'm talking to, they're used to study and play. So like if they don't play, they're still like, I've got a college degree to fall back on.
Yeah.
So like here it's generalized that you can do both. Whereas back home, it's like you can just play. Yeah. If you want to study, like you go to university, you get drunk the night before a game. It's not very professional,
right.
You know. Whereas the players in America are used to both. Like they're like at top MLS academies, they're thinking, okay, I'm going to make it to the first team, and if I don't make it to the first team, I'm going to get a full scholarship to go and play Division 1 college soccer and study. You know.
Yeah.
So
I saw a stat, and it's a stat that I use quite a bit, that 96% of CEOs in S&P 500 companies played elite college level sport. And that stat is used to show the skills that people develop from playing elite sport.
Yeah, it's so like important. I think now that I've kind of graduated and been involved in the like I was working in corporate America for like 3 years, being part of a team is like, you can tell the people that haven't played sports and the people that have played sports, you know, taking things, hey, you busy? I can take that off your plate. Hey, I'm going to be really busy. Can you please do this? Delegate, working as part of a team. Hey man, like that was an awesome assignment that you did, or that was an awesome case study that you did. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. Rather than the people that didn't play a team sport that you never hear from, people that reply slow on Slack, you know. Like playing part of a team sport is so important, whether it's soccer, football, baseball, anything.
And the resilience I think you develop,
determination,
because in sport, and especially like team sport, well, I guess any even individual sport as well, but you're gonna go through these challenges. You're gonna reach points where you stop progressing. So you've got to do new training methods, or suddenly you get dropped from the team, and then you've got to overcome that. You might start having bad form for a period of time. You've got to improve. You might lose a cup final, and then you've got to come back from an injury. All these things that you have to overcome. So when you then go into career, because you've overcome so much in sport, career is easy. I often find that, and that's what I found going into business. I felt there was so much more in my control in business compared to what things were like in football.
No, that's really interesting. And then Sean, just last question before we end up. Being an entrepreneur in football is something that I talk to a lot of my friends about, like making a business out of football. What's been your biggest challenge as a business owner in the football space?
I would say finding ways to have enough money to achieve your financial goals. There's so many people that want to coach in England. I'm giving an example in England, but in England, people coach for such low money because they love it so much. And so then it drives the price down so much. So I think that has been a hard thing, where we've had to create so much value to be able to explain why we charge more. And we're getting there. You know, we've made it very successful in England, and so now 6 months into the US, it's about doing it. And the early signs seem to be very good with our approach to football development and child development. It's being very, very well received here.
Good. Perfect. Awesome. Sean, thank you so much.
No, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Guys, if you found something interesting, you learned something, we'll obviously tag Sean's Instagram, send him a message saying, hey, that was really insightful. I learned that was great. And as always, if there's anything you want to know, or any topics you want us to talk about, any guests you want us to invite on, my DMs are always open. So, Sean, appreciate your time, and see you guys soon.